And now for our feature presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series.
Watson, touchdown! Hunter Renfrow.
He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Louisville baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Tuesday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Find us on the all-new JB and Goldwater app, and that's free. Download it, and you can watch and listen to our program daily. Right there, you can also be a part of our season ticket package, which we have some things coming out, and that this week is part of the all-new Gamecock Talk, so if you're already a member, great. If you're not, become involved, and you'll get some of that additional information over the next couple of days. Darren Goldwater, if you're watching us to the right of your screen, I'm Jamie. We're here until 2 o'clock today. That's our normal time, but yesterday we ran a little long. You can also find us at jbandgoldwatershow.com. 843-321-8893 is our phone number. It's also our text line. If you've got something to say it. Questions, comments, concerns, critiques, things of that nature, send it on over. We'll put it out. And Darren can also put it on the screen, so your name will be right there, and we'll address whatever you want us to address. So will Brendan Gulick with BuckeyesNowSI.com. He'll join us at 12:30 today from the great state of Ohio. What's left of it. Most of them are down here now, and we know that, but he's not. He's still up there covering Ohio State, and the Buckeyes will play Alabama in the national championship coming up on Monday. We'll get their side of things, go back and look at the defeat of Clemson, and look forward to the matchup with the big bad dogs from the SEC, the Tide. And then we also have Gene Sapakoff ahead at 1 o'clock today. Tonight, the Heisman Trophy winner will be revealed. He's a Heisman voter, and we're going to talk to him about that and also some things going on at Clemson and at South Carolina and so on and so forth. We've got football to get to, some Clemson news to start off with here in a minute. I do want to touch on some things in the NFL. We don't talk a lot of NFL around here, but if any of you saw what happened in the Eagles game the other night, They might have had bigger problems than they thought, or at least we knew about.
You mean the Washington football team game?
Yeah, that's right.
Uh-huh.
That's right. But I want to mention this right off the start, and we'll probably come back to this later, and we'll have a conversation about it later on in the week. I know the national championship is Monday night, but that's Monday. Sunday night. How fired up are we all to see this new documentary on HBO Max about Tiger Woods? If you haven't seen the preview for this is not one of the ESPN films where it's return to glory and let me tell you how much the whole world loves Tiger and things like that. This is like the deep, dark story of Tiger. Now, the good, the bad, the really bad, and then, of course, the good again, but it's a two-part this Sunday, next Sunday night.
Right. So, you think of Tiger Woods right now, and you think of the greatest, you think of the fall, then you think of the reclamation project, if you will, and then you think of the back and where he is right now. It covers the whole thing. It's a two-part series, so it'll be Sunday and then following Sunday as well. And what is it? Is it 2 hours each?
I think so.
I think it's 2 hours each.
Pretty sure it's 8 to 10.
Yeah, so it's going to be a really rare look behind the curtain, right? Tiger has forever done a magnificent job of showing you only what he wants to show you.
Yeah.
This is going to get a little bit farther behind that curtain and maybe some stuff we haven't seen before.
Yeah, we'll talk to Scott Glaze about this coming up on Thursday as well, but I'm really looking forward to it. If you have not seen a preview for this, you can find those previews. If you have HBO or the HBO Max app or something like that, I think you can probably find it on YouTube as well, but It's about a 2-minute preview, and there's some footage in there that you just haven't seen. And there's a conversation in there with one of the ladies that he was,
associated with.
Yeah, right. And that's just part of the preview. So I would keep your eyes on this if you have not heard about this yet. Coming out on Sunday night. Going to get to the Gamecocks here in just a minute. We've got some updates on the staff, maybe, and we'll talk about that a little bit further as well. But quickly, some news from Clemson. Just tweeted out from the Post and Courier's Josh Needleman a few minutes ago. Chancey Stuckey, former wideout there as well. He has been their player development coach. He has now been hired as a wide receivers coach at Baylor. So he'll head west to the Big 12, and he'll leave behind what he knows quite well, the upstate of South Carolina. About an hour ago, he issued a statement about his time at Clemson, but he will now become a full-time college on-field coach with Baylor.
Yesterday, Reggie Merriweather casually slipped in this idea of assistants are going to be going other places. He followed it up quickly. I'm not talking the big guys. He's not talking Elliott Venables, at least yet. He said, but other guys lower down on the totem pole are going to be going places. And so maybe this is the first of more to come here. But obviously it's a promotion for him.
Yeah.
It's going out to be a wide receivers coach and not just basically player ops. But it'll be interesting to see how many guys go.
Yeah, I think so. It was interesting yesterday, Reggie, on our program. That was the first time I've heard anybody associated with Clemson, especially somebody like Reggie, who is actually associated with Clemson, speak of coaches leaving the staff. And I didn't pry on that because it didn't appear that Reggie was going to be very comfortable with giving out any of that information. He probably wouldn't if he had all of it and it was concrete. But it looks like today is that first domino, which is player development coach Chancey Stuckey moving on. Clemson also had a couple of names drop into the transfer portal yesterday. Jordan Williams and Niles Pinckney, they're both going to move on and find other places to play, both also on the defensive line. So we'll keep an eye on where they end up. Clemson traditionally has not explored the transfer portal for gaps in their roster. We'll see if they decide to do that this year. But as of now, I would probably not anticipate them going back to the transfer portal. But those two guys are in it.
When we talk to Gene Sapakoff later today, he's going to, I'm assuming based on his articles, advocate that Clemson actually does dip into that transfer portal a little bit, because this is where we are today. And you have to adapt if you're going to stay where you are. You have to adapt if you're going to move forward, because the transfer portal isn't going anywhere. And it's more crowded now than it's ever been. There's more of a chance now to plug some holes. I mean, you're not getting a Travis Etienne or a Trevor Lawrence in the transfer portal, but might you get a number 2 back?
Right.
Might you get a second receiver who can go for 600-700 yards and a few scores? Yeah, you can make your team better. Can you get some offensive line help? Absolutely. You can make your team better. So it would make sense for teams to be a little bit more flexible, particularly ones like Clemson who have always avoided it. It makes sense to at least be open to the idea.
Yeah, South Carolina they've already taken one transfer wide receiver, Amarian Brown, coming from Georgia Tech. There's another one. It's a big name that's in the portal. That's Charleston Rambo from Oklahoma. One of the best wideouts that they had. New coach, Shane Beamer. Yeah, he came from Oklahoma as well. Certainly keeping an eye on him and where he ends up. I think he's originally from the state of Texas. So we'll see what happens with Charleston Rambo. But South Carolina needs wide receivers. They need good ones, and he is a good one. And he's in the portal, so that's a name to keep an eye on. And he'll be coached, if he comes to South Carolina, by Justin Stepp, who was one of multiple coaches yesterday that had their contracts approved in Columbia. If you missed the news, 8 of them in total were approved by the South Carolina Board of Trustees. That's Mike Bobo, the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, offensive line coach Will Friend, tight ends coach Eric Kimry, Des Kitchings remains as the running backs coach, special teams coordinator Pete Lembo, linebackers coach Mike Peterson, defensive line coach Tracy Rocker, and wide receivers coach, as I just mentioned, Justin Stepp. Here's what all of those coaches share, if you haven't heard. Multi-year deals, which is rare in college football. Generally, most assistant coaches are on one-year deals. You will find at times coordinators on multiple-year deals, and then sometimes others will be on them as well. Remember, you've got 4 holdovers here: Mike, Des, Mike Peterson, and Tracy Rocker. The rest of those guys are new guys, and We're going to get to the defensive coordinator and the defensive backs coach here in a moment, and the strength coach situation. Much more on that tomorrow with J.C. Sherbert as well, but we've got a little bit to push out to you here in a few moments. All those guys on 2-year deals, if they were already under a deal, they've got it reworked now for 2 more years. The one that's longer than that is Pete Lembo.
Yep.
The special teams coordinator, 3 years. And the numbers on all this, Bobo will earn 1.2. Will Friend, the offensive line coach, $700,000 a year. Kimry, $200,000 a year. Kitchings, $300,000. Pete Lembo, $450,000. Mike Peterson, $300,000. Tracy Rocker, $525,000, and Justin Stepp, $460,000. And I have no idea why the numbers are different. I do know why Eric Kimry's is different. He's never coached college football before. His is only $200,000, but that can be that will probably go up.
The one that I mean, at least questioned briefly was just that Lembo is getting less than Stepp, but Lembo's also getting an extra year, and he's making $10,000 less. So, I mean, that balances itself out, right?
Yeah, exactly. The Lembo situation is a really interesting situation. So I had during our quote Christmas break, like we're in high school or college, right? I had, I spoke to multiple people who have been fairly close to all these situations in Columbia. And one of the things that I was told, and of course, this is before we found out that Justin Stepp was going to be hired over the weekend, was, look, he retained the right 4 guys on the field, but this Lembo hire is special for South Carolina, and the staff would actually look a little bit different if Beamer wasn't going to be able to get him. And so I didn't really know what to make of that. I thought, well, what does that mean? Like, you have to hire a special teams coordinator. Oh, wait, it made sense. But Shane Beamer kind of knows special teams. So he may have coached them himself and decided to do a couple of different things on the staff, because you can have, 10 on-field assistant coaches, but he got his guy. And this guy, from what I have been told, is the guru of gurus when it comes to special teams.
Yeah, it's like Wes Mitchell said yesterday. We were not, I don't know, maybe we will call it Beamer ball, but it's the same general idea. One of the first things that Beamer said was special teams are going to be important. The turnover battle, winning special teams, the little things that Beamer ball was known for with his dad, Frank, that's going to be important with South Carolina. So he got a guy who's comfortable doing it. And the other part of the process that stuck with me was, I think it was his introductory press conference, Shane Beamer describing being a special teams coordinator and saying, look, I've never been the head coach before, but as a special teams coordinator, you're really over all of the guys. Right. So that's what Pete Lembo is. That's why he's also associate head coach, assistant head coach, whatever the official something head coach title is. That's why Lembo also has that tag with his actual title, because you need guys with that experience. And again, like we talked about yesterday, whoever this defensive coordinator is could very well have head coaching experience in his past. We know Mike Bobo has head coach experience in his past, and we know Pete Lembo does. So there's experience there to help out Shane Beamer.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got, Pete Lembo. First of all, you mentioned this yesterday, I think, right? I'm pretty sure it was you that mentioned the fact that he was such a successful head coach. He's been, but I mean, he hasn't been a successful head coach at the Power 5 level or anything like that. But everywhere he's been, he's won. And they've all had really good special teams as well. And when you look at what he is trying to accomplish, it made sense. I kind of mentioned this yesterday, piggybacked on your comment, the fact that you get Shane Beamer as head coach. Mike Bobo has been a head coach. He's the offensive coordinator. Pete Lembo has been a head coach. He's the special teams coordinator. And that leaves that defensive coordinator spot out there. And Derek Mason has been a leading candidate. Now, yesterday, Tony Morrell with the Big Spur did report that he was hearing that more than likely it would not end up being Derek Mason. I had somebody text me last night and say, I can't confirm that, and I don't know that that's entirely true at this point in time. It may have been yesterday. Somebody may have kind of caught in wind who's been in this process that, look, it looks like Derek Mason might do something else. But as it stands today, Derek Mason hasn't been hired anywhere else. And so I don't think that it's appropriate to totally eliminate him just yet until maybe there's another source or two that can confirm that Derek Mason will not be at South Carolina officially.
I think you'd agree with this as it pertains to Mason. Craig chimes in. I just threw it up there on the screen. The fact that Mason was fired after Shane Beamer was hired, does that mean he was not in the initial top 3? My assumption to that would be no, because the process was slow anyway. We knew that there were going to be some ramifications, trickle-down effects as other moves were being made. That's my guess. What would you say?
Well, I think that when Shane applied for this job, I think that he had, and look, this is my interpretation of the information that I have been kind of given over, I'd say, the course of the last month plus. I think that Shane kind of had a roadmap for what he would like to do as far as putting this staff together. And on that map, and we talked to Shane, and he didn't give a lot, and I didn't ask him about the staff because everybody was asking about the staff.
And what's he going to say?
I wasn't going to get anything. There's no reason to ask him about that. But the way that I've understood this to be is here is how I'd like to structure it. These are the guys I would like to target, and a lot of those guys were current coaches. All of them were current coaches. But some of them were also current head coaches, but there was enough information out there that they might not be for very long. Now, I don't know if Derek Mason was on that short list prior to his firing at Vanderbilt or not, but I could speculate that there's a chance that he was.
Yes.
Because if you go back before Will Muschamp was even let go, we talked about a lot of this, about just the movement in the SEC with coaches, what could happen. You know, you and I basically said there's 4 or 5 jobs that could be open at the end of the year. South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Auburn, Tennessee, and I threw one more in there, and I said maybe Kentucky, maybe, but that was like the one that I wasn't that was the least sold on that, and so were you. Well, we were dead on with 3 of the other 4. And I got news for everybody. I don't think that the gig at Tennessee is over quite yet either.
I agree.
Okay, because they're still internally investigating up there, and something just tells me that if there's a window where they could get out of it with Jeremy Pruitt with nothing that they have to do, that they have the right hire in place to do it, they'll do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know that to be true. I'm just speculating. But to your question and to Craig's question there, I would think that Derek Mason probably, if he wasn't on the list, he was probably at least in the conversation. Hey, I got to call him and at least talk to him about this, and let's see what happens. And certainly over the last couple of weeks, he has been maybe the front runner, but certainly.
And as Beamer's been going through the process, look, these guys talk. The coaching fraternity is minuscule. I mean, it may seem big. Everybody talks. Everybody knows each other. So even though Mason technically still had a job, he probably understood that job wasn't going to be there much longer. So there were probably conversations that were happening that just never got out to the public.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And, this staff right now, the on-field staff itself, including Shane Beamer, right now, without a hire as the defensive backs coach and the defensive coordinator, will make $6.88 million this year, $6,880,500. Now that number sounds like a lot. Dabo Swinney makes over $9 million himself. That's not that much. It's not that much. So here's what I'm saying. There is wiggle room in the budget here to go pay whoever you need to pay. If that's somebody that you really want and it's going to take some money to get them, they've got it. It's there. I kind of guesstimated at the beginning of this process, Darren, that they would probably have somewhere in the, I'd say, $9 to $10 million range to spend on a staff. And that includes Shane Beamer, how much money he takes as the head coach, his salary, which is like $2.75 million, which was lower than I think what a lot of us thought it would be. And he saved some money when some of the hires that he's made as well. I mean, Eric Kimrey's a great hire, but you don't have to pay him a ton yet because he's never done it before. So, and that's just the on-field job there, the on-field jobs. So I don't know who they're going to hire, but if it is Derek Mason or if it is another big-name defensive coordinator that's out there and we don't know anything about it, they've got the money to do it. And I've got every reason to believe we don't know a lot because he's kept all of this really tight to the vest. I mean, the folks, this isn't me patting myself on the back. I'm just throwing it out there as a reference. The folks that I talk to are almost as involved in any of this as you can possibly be without being Shane Beamer and Ray Tanner. And they had no idea what was going on. There was some speculation. We kind of thought, yeah, it's probably going to be Bobo and Des Kitchings and maybe this guy or that guy, but nobody really knew. Like, nothing has gotten out.
And Wes Mitchell said that yesterday. He said, for Beamer going through this process the first time, he's kept everything so close to the vest. There have been so few leaks. There's been so few nuggets of information that you can actually glean out of what's happening until you're actually told something official or nearly official. And that's a credit to Beamer, but you're right. We don't know much, especially as it comes to, let's say, a salary for the defensive coordinator. It's going to depend on who he is and his credentials, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
The other part about this, Shane Beamer said in his press conference that he was fine with the salary he was going to get because he's been given every assurance from Ray Tanner and Bob Caslin at the school that they will have every resource available for the staff that he wants.
Right.
So is that playing out? I would assume so. It's not like we've heard something different. We'll see what that number jumps to, financially speaking, once the defensive coordinator is named.
12:20 here on a Tuesday afternoon. 843-321-8893 is our phone number. It's also our text line. One question I did ask Shane when we had him on was his intent to bring former qualified football players from South Carolina back into the fold, working underneath him in the staff. And he said, absolutely. That was his word. Absolutely. We will be doing that. And we've already been kind of pushing to do some of that. And of course, he has now with Eric Kimry. He is retaining Connor Shaw in an off-field role. I do have some information that I am not prepared to share just yet. Probably a few more days before we can really talk about this. But there could be an additional hire that could kind of work off the field with Connor, and it would be a really good one. But that role that he's kind of been in, that player development, the program that basically was started with Marcus Lattimore, that program could be spiced up a little bit, and it might not just be led by Connor Shaw going down the road, which I think is really good. And if the guy that I've been told is more than likely or maybe sliding into that spot with Connor, I think you'll all find to be very impressed when that happens. But the one thing that we did talk to Shane about, as I mentioned, was additional players. There is real information out there that he is going to expand this staff and with some of these off-field roles with multiple former players, and most of that is not information that we have yet, but many of those guys have been spoken to. He has been going through the process and trying to figure out what the right fits would be and who they'd be and things of that nature. And I do think that there will be I think there will be a pretty happy fan base if what comes to fruition or what they're working through comes to fruition.
And keep in mind what James also said throughout this whole process, qualified guys. So the pool of guys he's talking to is however big it actually is for the spots that are significantly smaller than that pool. So he's going through the candidates, the former players, guys who probably have expressed an interest to come back and help in some capacity. Then the question is, okay, can you help? Are you qualified to help? Are you better than that guy who's equally qualified? So that's why this is going to take a little bit of time to get those names circulated out to make sure that Beamer is finalized on his decisions.
That's right. That's right. As of now, though, if I did have somebody send me a message and say, how would you grade this staff thus far? Probably an A- at this point. I think that he has a great mix of coaches who understand this state, understand this program. They can develop, they can recruit alongside a bunch of coaches who've been doing this a long time. They have led programs, as you've already mentioned in this segment today. Pete Limbo, Mike Bobo, we'll see who lands as the DC. I think it's an experienced group, and I also think it's a very hungry group, and I think it's a pretty good mix when it comes to college football. And you don't have to look too far up the road at Clemson to see how they kind of designed their program years back, and they've filled gaps in that staff from time to time by promoting from within, getting guys ready, trying to keep their tradition alive. And I think that Shane Beamer has a very similar plan.
Yeah, it's about family, just like it was last night at Dog and Duck, because it was Monday night and it's family bingo night at 3 Dog and Duck locations, Mount Pleasant in Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road.
No doubt. 12:25 here. We do have Brendan Gulick coming up. 843-321-8893 is our phone number. It is also our text line if you would like to be involved in the program. Tennessee is still trying to figure out what they're going to do with the future of the football program. They have released a statement about their football investigation, and here is some of what that said. Quote, "We take seriously our institutional commitment to NCAA compliance and are reviewing regulatory issues that have been brought to our attention. As part of that process, we are currently working with attorneys Kyle Skillman and Michael Glazier with Bond, Schoenig, and King. We'll provide additional information when it's appropriate." So they've got 2 lawyers to assist in an internal investigation. I mean, look, that's what I referenced here at the top of this thing. All right. And one of those guys, the Glazier guy, worked on the NCAA enforcement staff for 7 years.
Yep.
And also assisted the Tennessee athletics department like about 10 years ago in firing Bruce Pearl. See where I'm going with this? I mean, they hired 2 lawyers. Okay, where can we be covered? Where can we not be covered? What do you know from the NCAA side that would help with this? Oh, you also brought this to our attention 10 years ago so we could get rid of Bruce Pearl.
Right.
I don't know that they're going to fire Jeremy Pruitt, but, I mean, he's 16 and 19 through 3 years, Darren, and they've got problems, and they just hired 2 lawyers. If he's terminated without cause, they owe him almost $13 million. Tennessee's paying coaches from 20 years ago still.
Right. So are they investigating to find an answer? Are they investigating specifically because they're looking for something?
There's more to this than what we're seeing.
Right. Are they looking for the way out is the question. And the answer could easily be yes, but it's a could be type of thing, but it smells like it, doesn't it?
It does.
It does. I mean, there's enough rumblings there. They just signed him to an extension. The last thing they want to do is sign him to an extension and fire him a couple days, months later. It's not what they want.
I'm telling you. There's a story out from Brandon Marcello on Billy Napier as well. We're going to get to that a little bit later in the program. We'll tie that back in with the situation at Tennessee. We're also going to talk about Dan Mullen and his future at Florida. It appears that the Falcons might be interested in bringing him over to Atlanta. Could there still be a couple of coaching changes to be made in the SEC? Unbelievable. You just never know. But we're going to get to that in just a little bit right here on our program. Gene Sapakoff ahead at 1 o'clock today. He's a Heisman voter. The award ceremony is tonight. We're going to know who wins this thing. We'll talk to him about that and much, much more. We do have some hoops to get to a little bit later as well. But coming up next, Brendan Gulick, BuckeyesNowSI.com. We've had him before. He's a great guest. One of the few left in the great state of Ohio, not living down here in South Carolina. He will join us as we look back at their victory over Clemson. We look ahead to the matchup with the Alabama Crimson Tide right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
Is your old car really scary? Does it look dreadful or smell awful? Don't be frightened. There's never been a better time to trade in your spooky old car. Stokes Volkswagen just received a new shipment of the VW Atlas and VW Crossport. But here's what makes that even sweeter. Every new Atlas and Crossport is $3,000 off MSRP. Plus, every 2020 Volkswagen is available with 0% financing. That's right. You get both the huge discount and 0% financing. So if you want to play trick or treat at other dealerships, that's okay. Come see us at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or visit StokesVW.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Plus tax tag includes $399.50 closing fee. Offer subject to lender approval. Expires month end.
Merry Christmas!
Keith Gunther here with McFadden Pest Control, wishing you all a happy holiday season. The only outdoors we want coming inside your home this time of year is the Christmas tree. McFadden Pest Control wants to make sure your family has a safe and enjoyable holiday season. And the best way we know how to do that is to make sure your homes are pest-free. We've been protecting the Low Country for over 40 years. Families trust us. We hope you will too. We're wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas from the entire McFadden Pest Control family. McFaddenPestControl.com.
Family Bingo Night is back. all 3 Dog and Duck locations. Every Monday from 6 to 8 is the perfect time to bring the kids, have dinner, and play bingo. They've upped the prizes with retail store gift cards, gas cards, in-house cash cards, and kid-friendly gift cards like Nintendo, pizza, App Store, and more. Thanks for supporting local businesses like the Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
Hey! Now! Hear this.
Who the hell is that?
The JB and Goldwater Show. Live, loud, and online.
All right, 12:30. Welcome back. The JB and Goldwater Show, protected by our friends at McFadden Pest Control. Heath Gunther, McFaddenPestControl.com, in business for over 40 years. They're coming to get rid of that one spider that already killed. Well, that just shows you they came 3 months ago. I haven't had anything but one spider, so he's dead now.
There you go. So they've already laid the groundwork to kill everything.
That's right. By the way, real quick before we get Brendan in here, and he could move with us if he wants to, plenty of room. You ever had a desire to head to Lucas, Texas?
Nope.
An 18-acre estate is listed for $9.9 million in Lucas, Texas. That has a turf baseball field, complete with batting cages, covered seating, and dugouts. A regulation-size fenced-in basketball court with heated floors.
An
85,000-gallon pool, and there's a pond with largemouth, catfish, and trout as well.
And it could be yours for a cool $9 million?
9.9. Yeah.
10 million?
Probably talk them down a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think, Brendan? You want to move in with us? You want to be roommates?
It's actually my summer home. I was going to tell you that I'm willing to cut you a deal if you want.
Look, man, with all the money that Dabo makes, I would almost be roommates with Dabo to go live there because you would never have to see him in a place that big.
It's anytime you don't have to see Dabo is a good thing, right?
This is a guy who knows his audience. He's coming on to talk about Hammer and Clemson, and he throws a shot at Dabo right there. Well done.
Well, look, you know, Dabo he kicked the brush fires all week, and they got what was coming to him. There's no doubt.
He doesn't. I don't think he cares, but he certainly wasn't out trying to make any friends, and it bit him, and it bit him hard. And Ohio State laid it on pretty good, and Buckeye fans have continued to remind him of that here in the days since then.
Yeah, I think they have. By the way, let me
quick. The Ohio State Alumni Association Twitter account this morning tweeted, "Good morning to everyone except Dabo Swinney." I mean, it's just not going to stop for a while.
No, it's not. But it's all in good fun, is what they say. Let me reintroduce this segment, by the way, because for people that you've been on with us 3 or 4 times, I think. But this is Brendan Gulick. He is one of the few that is left in the great state of Ohio. The rest of them have moved down this way. But that's okay, Brendan. You're still out there holding strong. He's with Buckeyes Now, SI. It's the Sports Illustrated Now channel covering the Ohio State Buckeyes, who took down Clemson this weekend in major fashion, 49-28, the final score. All right, let me get you back in here. I'm sorry for picking on you, being one of the
hey, look, I'd rather be in Hilton Head playing golf, and frankly, a day like today, my heart is with my Cleveland Browns, who are just ripping my heart out right now after 18 years of not being in the playoffs. Your head coach, your offensive line coach, your assistant offensive line coach, your receivers coach, your tight end coach, your starting guard, a receiver that plays like 50% of the snaps, they're all out this weekend. This whole thing's going to hell pretty quickly. So
what happened? Was that a Super Bowl?
Yeah, I don't know.
I know what happened, but like, was it a playoff celebration party gone wrong or something?
That would make for a good story, but I don't know, man. I don't know. Cleveland went from a really high to a you got to be kidding me in the flip of a switch.
Well, look, it's 2020, 21, whatever it is. We're still in the pandemic. You're in the playoffs, so that's good. And now just deal with it.
We're going to deal with it. I think there's a lot of people that are going to keep their hopes pretty low so that they don't have their hearts crushed this weekend, as much as that can possibly be the case, but we'll see. Anyways, let's talk Buckeyes. That's supposed to make it.
That's right, man. 49-28, the final score this weekend. We spoke with our friend Reggie Merriweather yesterday, who former tailback at Clemson. He's on the sidelines for calling the games on the Clemson radio network. And look, he handed all credit over to Ohio State yesterday. He said, man, they just whipped us. They just whipped us is what they did up and down the field. Let's start, though, with what we mentioned a moment ago. What was going on up there throughout the week? You know, what was circulating across social media, in the newspapers, on the television screens? How much of the focus was on Dabo Swinney's 11th spot ranking of Ohio State and things like all the stuff off the field? How much were you hearing about that as opposed to on the field heading into the ball game?
Honestly, it was constant. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. That was the predominant theme all week. Now, how much of that is just manufactured and fans talking and media stuff? Probably all of it, you know, but the players and coaches, I mean, they professionally danced around it, but they acknowledged, look, yeah, we saw it, we heard it, we don't really care what they think, we're going to go out and play. But I mean, a perfect example, after the game is over, a couple of the players in the celebration on the field grabbed one of the whiteboards and the dry erase marker on a big board that's usually reserved for, you know, drawing up play diagrams during the game, and just wrote the words ranked 11th ? I mean, like, you know, come on, man. It's been on their minds all week. Last year, Ohio State felt like they should have won that game. They had a touchdown taken off the board that shouldn't have been taken off the board. They, you know, similar to Skalski being ejected this year, Shaun Wade was ejected last year, and, you know, by the letter of the law, I guess they were both ejectable hits, but they were both, man, that looks like a football play to a lot of people that have played football for an awfully long time, and no longer is that allowable. There were some bad breaks last year that Ohio State felt like, you know, that game was kind of taken from them. And the score 29-23 was in the facility and on video boards in the weight room every single day for the last 370 days. And, you know, they dedicated time in practice to getting back to that stage with the hopes of playing Clemson again, whether it was them or not, but kind of using that as a motivating factor. And then when you throw in all the other stuff that happened in college football and to Ohio State the last 12 months, it just sort of made for this incredible story of, you know, how all these things have happened, and yet the serendipity of being back in that same moment against Clemson again on the same stage. It just sort of made for Ohio State fans and for the players, it sort of made for this narrative that this is exactly how it was supposed to happen, and it is their time, even when everybody on the outside of the program said there's no way that they're going to be able to beat Clemson. They've only played 6 games. Well, Ohio State stuck it to them pretty good and showed that the truncated schedule really wasn't their fault.
Yeah, no, it wasn't their fault, number one.
No.
Number two, obviously they're a talented football team. A lot was made last week leading up to the game about sign stealing for Clemson. Now, obviously, any coach will try and get any sign they can. It's not like it's forbidden or anything like that. It's possible to do, and it's well known in coaching circles that Brent Venables and Clemson have had a lot of success doing that. As Ohio State worked on Clemson all throughout the year, was there a sense going back to last year's game that was a part of the game? And as they worked on Clemson all year long, was that part of the game plan?
I don't know how much of it, you know, throughout the offseason was, hey, we got to focus on the fact that, you know, Clemson tries to steal our signs. Like you said, everybody tries to do it. They just happen to be really good at it for whatever the reason is. But Ohio State was keenly aware of it. I mean, Ryan Day, again, professionally danced around the topic in a press conference last week when he basically said, yeah, you know, they seem to have the right defense called pretty much all the time. They I don't know how they do it, but they seem to be pretty good at it. And, you know, Justin Fields said after the game that they huddled more often because it was a way for them to not signal things in. And, you know, they're just cognizant of trying to control that part of the game as best they could. So I don't know how much, you know, crazy over the top attention was paid to that. But it was absolutely on their minds for sure.
Well, you know, Brendan, they did huddle more often, but I also went back and watched pieces of that game, and you could see Ohio State send personnel in late in a lot of those plays. And I want to ask you about that. If you have any in-depth inside information on how they were doing some of that, you'd see them run out there and they kind of they wouldn't set themselves up, but they'd send in a certain personnel group, Clemson would send in a personnel group, and then Ohio State would go ahead and flip-flop one or two guys, and as soon as those guys got lined up, they'd snap the football, and Clemson, they were lost. They'd have one side of the field almost overloaded, and the other side, they're trying to figure it out. Do you have any additional information as to kind of what was going on the headsets and on the sideline to pull off some of that?
Yeah, not necessarily, but I can tell you that from what I've heard, the best ways to try and beat Clemson's defense is to either play super fast and snap the ball literally within 10, 12 seconds of the previous play being over, or to play excruciatingly slow and kind of do what they did, where they're going to milk the play clock and they're going to, bring a certain personnel group on the field, and then all of a sudden maybe flip one or two guys, last minute. Because you're right. I mean, look at Trey Sermon's touchdown run early on in the game. Clemson had what felt like 7 defenders from basically the center over to the right. The whole left side of the field was wide open. Yeah. And the Buckeyes took advantage of that. So I am sure that there was some premeditated thoughts there from Ohio State about, okay, what can we do to make life as confusing as possible? Because look, it's 11 on 11, right? But football's a numbers game. If a team respects the run, they're going to put an extra guy in the box and you're going to have a chance to throw the ball. If they don't think you can run and they trust one-on-one matchups, they're not going to put an extra guy in the box, and they're going to force you to try and beat them on the ground. Ohio State and Clemson, from a talent perspective, have a lot of really good, talented players on both sides. And so you're just looking for the game within the game, trying to find the matchups and the advantages that you can. And I think by creating some of that confusion, again, early in the game, you saw it several times. Clemson's linebackers, especially Skalski, while trying to bark out some calls, there were guys that were flipping back and forth, different sides of the line of scrimmage, didn't know where to line up. So I'm sure that was a significant part of Ohio State's game plan.
If you haven't seen some of this, what we're talking about, I retweeted it from the show's account, I think last night, but there's a nice thread of video, a lot wider and higher than what you could see on TV, showing all of the confusion in Clemson's defense, even when it looked like they should be in position because Ohio State did things a little bit differently. Even still, Clemson's defense was at least minorly out of sync, if not majorly out of sync, and it led to a lot of the issues. But let's go back to Justin Fields here for a second, because I don't know how he survived the hit. I don't know how there isn't like a lacerated spleen or something like that in there. And they haven't given any information on him other than we expect him to play. So do you have any information on how healthy Justin Fields is?
They are extremely tight-lipped. They're not going to say a word. And they even did that last week with Fields' thumb, because you might remember in the Northwestern game, he kind of banged up his right thumb. And he said after that game that it kind of prevented him from gripping the ball right and throwing it effectively, and that's why they ran the ball so well and why Trey Sermon had such a big game. Ryan Day said yesterday, straight out, when he was asked specifically by a reporter, he said, look, we don't discuss specifics of injuries. We'll put out an availability report and leave it at that. But he said he absolutely expects Justin Fields to play. To me, it's not so much can he play, it's how healthy is he, because Bama's good enough that if you're playing, you can't just be there and fill space. You got to be effective. I have to imagine he's going to get every ounce of medical treatment that he could possibly get, that he could possibly need to get ready for this game. I don't think he could be any more ready by the time Monday gets here. I don't think it's fair to speculate. Did he break a rib? Did he just get a bad bruise? Like, nobody really knows. But Justin's a tough kid, that's for sure. And he's certainly shown that think about this. His performance this past weekend, after that hit, he threw for 288 more yards and 4 more touchdowns. He knew, I can't come out of the game. And, it's not a slight to the backup quarterbacks. That's Justin Fields' leadership and knowing, hey, we've worked for this moment. I'm not going to go let my teammates down.
Brendan Gulick, Buckeyes now SI, or I did say that right.
You got
Buckeyes,
it right.
I always say Buckeyes SI now, like when I'm referencing you in other times. BuckeyesNowSI.com. Joining us here at 12:44 on a Tuesday afternoon. Has he officially declared for the draft?
No, none of the Buckeyes have declared yet.
Nobody is declared yet. Wow.
Nope.
Okay. That's
They got another game to play.
Yeah, one more
I was
game.
going to say that I'm sure we'll start seeing some of those things soon, but their attention is focused on Alabama.
You think he's got a shot to jump to that number one spot?
I heard somebody whose opinion I trust, but who said this and made me scratch my head the other day, make the comment that he thought it was 55-45 whether or not Trevor Lawrence stays or goes. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about, man? He's a slam dunk. He's got to be the first pick in the draft. Right. And his point was, he'd probably be the first pick in the draft next year too. And there's some unfinished business that maybe he would want to attend to. You would think that Trevor Lawrence would have said something already. So I don't know. I guess I haven't considered that, but I have a hard time thinking that Trevor's not going to come out. Could Justin be the number one pick in the draft? I guess it's possible. I don't think so, but it's possible.
Trevor Lawrence would be crazy. He'd be crazy.
Why would he not come out?
I mean, you're turning down millions and risking millions in turning it down. It'd be crazy.
Yeah, that's makes no sense to me.
Yeah, he's had 34-2 as a starter. He's probably a college football Hall of Famer. I mean,
I agree.
He probably is. Disappointing the way his season ended each of the last 2 years for him and for his team. But what more does he have left to accomplish? The whole point of playing college football, if you're an upper echelon guy who chooses to go to one of these, blue blood programs, the whole point is you're going there because you think you can play in the NFL. That's it. And Trevor Lawrence, I mean, there is nothing left for him to show. I have to think it's a matter of time before he comes out. But again, somebody that I trust, somebody that brought it to my attention. I guess I filed it away in the back of my head that he hasn't said anything yet, but I still fully expect him to come out.
Well, I tell you what, as it pertains to Justin Fields, he was throwing darts the other night. I mean, we've seen a lot of guys with a lot of great arms out there, especially over the last, I'd say, decade or so, as offenses have changed and you get to kind of showcase that a little bit more. He was throwing missiles across the field, and somehow they were landing in the hands. You can't throw those in Columbia, South Carolina. They drop all those things, but not up there at Ohio State. Let me ask you this: one more question on Clemson, and then let's move to Bama. We do have a little bit of news potentially, maybe on Alabama. That wouldn't be great news for Ohio State, but we'll get to that in just a minute. This is don't take this in the wrong way. I'm not taking a shot at Ohio State, but I think you'll know where I'm coming from here.
Okay.
Generally, when Ohio State is in the mix at the end of the year, which they pretty much always are for the national championship or the college football playoff, depending on what era you're in, you get the whole country pulling against Ohio State. Unless you're a big Buckeyes fan, there's just not a lot of people that like to see them win because they've won so much. But I mentioned yesterday to Darren and whoever one of our guests was, it felt different going into this game. Like it felt, and I'm not talking about like from the South Carolina side here, like the rivalry. I'm talking about what I was seeing across the country. It felt like those roles were switched in this game. Like there was much more of the college football world that wanted to see Ohio State win that game and move on. It was to play Alabama. They'd already seen Bama win basically, and wanted to see that matchup. And I think maybe that's twofold, Brendan. Like maybe part of it is, people just are tired of seeing Clemson. And I think the other part is Alabama. People are tired of seeing Clemson versus Alabama. I think they wanted to see a different matchup. Did you kind of have that feel a little bit going into the game?
A little bit. My perspective is that, look, it is so hard to get to the top of the mountain, and it's even harder to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And for as good as Ohio State has been since Jim Tressel took over the program, essentially 20 years ago, we're talking about 2 decades now of extremely good football, except for one season. Ohio State has only been in a couple national championship games since 2002. They lost to Florida and LSU in back-to-back years in I guess it was the 07 and 08 title games, but really it was the 06 and 07 seasons. Right. They won it in 2002 and they won it in 2014. But it kind of feels like Ohio State has been, program tier 1B behind tier 1A, Alabama and Clemson. And some of that, I think, is just recency, right? I mean, you kind of mentioned it. Alabama and Clemson have been the top dog for the last, 7 years. They've essentially dominated in the playoff. Alabama missed it for the first time last year. Clemson's made the college football playoff 6 years in a row. There's something to being, the team that's been there so frequently that maybe fans get a little bit tired of it. Maybe they just want to see something new, something fresh. I'm not sure so much that it was people rooting for Ohio State to beat Clemson as much as it's like, hey, let's see somebody knock off Clemson. And look, this is a rich get richer thing. Look at the recruiting rankings. The best players in the country are consistently choosing to go to Ohio State, Alabama, and Clemson, and a few other good programs, but those three schools are always right there. They've got the best coaches in the country. They've got the best players coming in. Those coaches develop those players. They've promised them, hey, we're going to give you opportunities to play and develop your craft and get to the NFL. And look at the success of guys that have played at those programs going to the next level. It's this machine, and it's not going to stop. So it's going to take something pretty special to knock these teams off. I'll give you a great example because I just saw this earlier. So Northwestern plays Ohio State. The Buckeyes had 14 five-star kids on their roster and 52 four-star kids on their roster this year. Northwestern, who played the Buckeyes in the Big Ten title game, was a very good football team this year. 1 5-star and 3 4-star players. The Buckeyes have more 5-star kids on their roster right now than the rest of the league does combined.
Jeez.
Okay, it's the same thing with looking at some of these, really, really elite schools. They recruit at a high level, and I think people at some level, they almost get tired of it. I had friends that reached out and said, yeah, that's great. Ohio State made it, but who wants to get emotionally invested in a playoff with Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Notre Dame? They're probably the 4 biggest brand names in college football. To some people, that was just plain boring. Where you look at maybe the Iowa Hawkeyes, who had a great season, but just couldn't quite get to the Big Ten title game to even have a chance to beat Ohio State. So, I think there's just this feeling of, man, it's the same old team, same old success. And for once, because Clemson had beaten Ohio State the last several years, the Buckeyes were the underdog in the game, and I think they're going to try to relish the same role on Monday.
Brendan Gulick, 12:52 here on Tuesday afternoon. Buckeyes Now, SI.com. Really good stuff to get you prepared for the national championship coming up on Monday night between Ohio State and Alabama, as we've been referencing. Here's a little bit of news from Nick Saban on Jalen Waddle. He could play Monday night, according to Coach Saban. That's what he said ahead of today's practice. Quote, he's been running, but we need to see him in practice. Our medical people will evaluate him as the week goes on and make a decision from there. He wants to play, and he's been working hard to get back. We know that they're loaded. Ohio State's loaded. We talked to you before the season. You said they were really good, and you were right. Here they are, and they're ready to go to try to win a national championship. But Bama has been perceived, and rightfully so, as the top dog in the sport throughout the year. They can score at will. When their defense plays well, they're still one of the best defenses out there. What's the game plan? What have you been doing this week trying to uncover how Ohio State, no one's going to stop them, but how can they slow down that Bama offense to make this a fourth quarter into the fourth quarter type game? That's what it's going to take to beat them.
I think the formula, maybe not the exact same play calls, maybe not the exact same schematic strategy. The formula, in my opinion, to beating Alabama is very similar to the formula of beating Clemson. Trevor Lawrence threw for 400 yards against Ohio State, but Clemson was never really in the game. They ran for 40. Travis Etienne was a total non-factor in the running game. Now, he was pretty involved in the screen game, and that certainly helped Clemson last year, and they went to it early in that semifinal game down in the Sugar Bowl. I think Ohio State offensively feels like they can score on Bama. And I don't think that's a slight against Bama. They got torched defensively in a couple games this year, and most recently by Florida. There is tape out there of Alabama's weaknesses. And Ohio State has the talent, especially at the skill positions, to make some of those big plays happen. You saw in that semifinal how Justin Fields can hit the home run ball just as much as he can throw a really accurate 10 or 15-yard pass that can, productively move the team down the field. I'm not really that concerned with Ohio State's ability to score against Alabama as long as they play, mistake-free football. If you're constantly behind the chains, if you're called for penalties and things consistently, it could be a tough day. But I believe Ohio State can score on Alabama. The question is, how well can Ohio State play and on defense, and can they make Alabama one-dimensional? Because they're kind of looking at a mirror image. They've got an elite running back. They've got a very good quarterback who I don't know if he's necessarily a slam dunk guy at the NFL level, but Mac Jones is a fantastic quarterback in that system. They've got really good speed players on the outside. Not having Dickerson, I think, is going to hurt them a little bit. Ohio State's interior pass rush is outstanding. The Buckeyes have to find a way to make them one-dimensional, and hopefully that's by shutting down Najee Harris and trying to force Alabama to throw the ball. That's a really uncomfortable thought because Ohio State's secondary at times has been a little shaky, and Alabama's got some real dudes on the outside. But I think it's a similar formula. That's how they try to win.
You think this is going to be similar, I guess, to that Alabama-Florida game where it is a shootout and it's one of the games that maybe kind of goes down in the lore as, hey, you remember where you were for that championship game?
I don't know if I think about it as much as that game as I honestly think it could reflect pretty similarly the last time these two teams met. It was 42-35. Yep. It was a really physical, hard-fought game. The thing that Ohio State's defense does not get enough credit for publicly, I think their linebackers are really good in coverage. Pete Werner and Tuff Borland and Baron Browning have had phenomenal seasons. Like I said earlier, it's a numbers game. If they stack the box and stop Harris, that obviously helps. But I really like Werner and Borland in coverage. Obviously not deep coverage, but they've done a good job this year. And if they can force Alabama to just kind of take little plays down the field, that helps. I mean, again, perfect example. Clemson had almost 450 yards of offense in that game. They didn't have a single play over 30 yards, not one. Ohio State's defense did not give up the big play that game. Sometimes this year, they've been susceptible to that. If they can figure out a way to not let Mac Jones take the top off the defense or not let Najee Harris run wild, I think the Buckeyes have a really good chance to win a hard physical football game.
That is the last time they played, right? The 2015
Sugar Bowl. Yep. The semifinal. Yep. In fact, I don't remember the year off the top of my head. It's a long way out, but they did sign a regular season home and home. I don't know. It's probably 7 or 8 years from now, if I remember correctly. It was a further out scheduled game, but they will play each other in a regular season game coming up.
I'm checking on it now. I think it's like 31 or something like that.
I was going to say it's like 29, 30 or something like that. It's a ways away.
Isn't it funny how that works out? You schedule 10 years in advance, but in a pandemic, you can schedule 3 days in advance.
27 and 28 is the answer.
Oh, that's not that far.
No.
Okay. Not too far.
Okay.
Before we let you go, man, first of all, we want to thank you for everything, but anything else that you're digging on that we need to keep our eyes on throughout the week as we get prepped for this year's national championship?
Oh, boy. I love Ohio State's tight end room. They don't get nearly the love that they deserve. I think they are as good a blocking tight end group as you're going to find anywhere, and frankly, they're pretty deep. Luke Farrell and Jeremy Ruckert get a lot of the reps, but it's more than just the two of them. Trey Sermon's gotten a lot of headlines lately, but maybe you haven't seen that this back-to-back stretch now of these last 2 games for him. He's run for 524 yards, and it's an Ohio State program record for rushing yards by one player in consecutive games. The health of Ohio State's offensive line is something I'm paying attention to. Left guard Harry Miller, who's kind of had an up and down year as a first-year starter. He had COVID and missed this last game. The only reason we know he had COVID is because his mom said it on Facebook. Typically, the school doesn't release that kind of stuff, but I don't know if he's going to be able to return. It depends on how early his diagnosis happened and when the 17 days that he could come back and make sure that he's, physically healthy enough to play. Wyatt Davis, the starting right guard, is a consensus All-American, and I think he's a first-round draft pick. Wyatt said after the game that he's healthy and he's okay, but he's been helped off the field in 2 of the last 3 games with a knee injury. He just said last game it locked up on him and it looked worse than it was, and he's okay. But, when your best offensive lineman needs help by 2 trainers coming off the field, that's a little alarming. So keep your eye on his health. And I would love to see some real production from the freshman wide receivers. Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson are each averaging 100 yards plus per game receiving wise, and they've earned every bit of the praise that they have deserved this year. But I am telling you what, this receivers room is stupid talented. They are so deep. This freshman class is unbelievable. Ohio State last year got Julian Fleming, who's currently a freshman, to commit. Number 1 wide receiver recruit in the country. In the class of 21, Emeka Egbuka, the number 1 receiver in the country, just committed to Ohio State a couple days before signing day. And about 2 months ago, the number 1 receiver in the country for the class of 22, Caleb Burton out of Texas, is committed to Ohio State. It's not going to get any better if you're a defensive coordinator in the Big Ten or if you're one of these elite programs trying to stop the Buckeyes. Jackson Smith and Jigba is really, really good. Jamison Williams is a sophomore, but he's had a great year. But Smith and Jigba and Julian Fleming in particular, I think it'd be pretty cool to see those 2 guys burst out on a big stage. So those are some of the things I'm looking for this week.
Well, the Crimson Tide get the first crack at that coming up on Monday night. I think it's going to be a special national championship this year between Ohio State and Alabama. We always appreciate your time, Brendan. We hope that you had a wonderful and very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we certainly look forward to following along over the next week or so as this game is set to go here in about 6 days. Thanks so much, my friend, and we'll talk soon, okay?
You bet. Thanks, guys, for having me, and go Bucks.
There you go.
Later, man.
Brendan Gulick, BuckeyesNow.si.com. Time for a timeout. By the way, the sermon note, 524 yards in the last 2 games on the ground. Over the last 3 games, I did the math. 636 yards in the last 3 games combined, 70 carries. That's 9 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns. That's a season in 3 games for Trey Sermon. Gene Sapakoff with the Post and Courier. He's up next right here on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Merry Christmas!
Keith Gunther here with McFadden Pest Control, wishing you all a happy holiday season. The only outdoors we want coming inside your home this time of year is the Christmas tree. McFadden Pest Control wants to make sure your family has a safe and enjoyable holiday season. And the best way we know how to do that is to make sure your homes are pest-free. We've been protecting the Low Country for over 40 years. Families trust us. We hope you will too. We're wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas from the entire McFadden Pest Control family. McFaddenPestControl.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston. Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Low Country. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit StonoFerryGolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. StonoFerryGolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Flamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the national anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
All right, final hour here on this Tuesday afternoon, January the 5th. Welcome back to JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, stokesvw.com. We're on the all-new JB and Goldwater app. We're also available at jbandgoldwatershow.com. You can watch and view our program daily for free. And if you do that, you get to see this guy every week, or listen to him at least. He's on a little early today on a Tuesday afternoon. Heisman voter himself, Gene Sapakoff with the Post and Courier. Happy New Year, my friend. How are you?
And a happy 2021 to you two guys.
Did you know that when 2021 took over, COVID was over? Isn't that what everybody was thinking? Oh, New Year. It's all going to be gone.
That's what was reported in April, but things have changed a little bit.
Oh, wait, it doesn't care what the calendar says? I thought it was just like a 2K, whatever it was, and the computer's going to shut down.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. No, not quite.
Yeah, I heard that, all of that, right? Leading up to the new year. Oh, it's going to be a new year. COVID's going away. I'm like, oh, is it? When?
At midnight, obviously.
Oh, all right, cool. All right, Gene, I know that we're a little bit late getting to you, and I know you've got somewhere to be at 1:30, so we'll get right to it. The Heisman vote will be finalized tonight, and they'll give us a winner. We've been waiting on a winner. I don't think that you're going to tell us who you voted for or anything like that, but as you look at this stage tonight, this group of talent, how do you look at this group of talent versus years past?
It's really one of the weirdest things that I've seen, because I think you can say at the same time that I don't think this is the strongest group I've seen, and I don't think there's a great candidate. At the same time, I think any one of the four, plus Najee Harris, are very deserving. If either one of the quarterbacks that aren't playing for Alabama won, I think you could say they deserve it. Kyle Trask absolutely lifted Florida up to a place where they just haven't been in a while, finally getting to the championship game. Finally, since the Urban, actually McElvain got him there a few times, but still, he lifted that Florida Gator program. There's no doubt. And Trevor Lawrence, very deserving, best talent in the country, and any one of the three Alabama guys. So there's that. On the other hand, this isn't Johnny Manziel, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Tim Tebow, Cam Newton, Robert Griffin III. All those guys were much more clearly the best player. Maybe it's because there were weaker years in some of those, but it's just a strange strange Heisman year, but then again, it's so 2020, right?
Does that speak to parity, or I mean, is it a good thing that the race is, I guess, so tight, like you just pointed out? I mean, some of the guys were so clearly the best player in the country, and now these guys are deserving, but no one head and shoulders above. I mean, is that a good thing for college football?
Yeah, I think there are years like this, Darren. I mean, let's just look at the Alabama situation. Like, do you vote for one of those guys, or do you say that those three guys, and I'm absolutely lumping Najee Harris in there because in some years he might have won the Heisman Trophy. Do they make each other better? I think that's certainly true. And then you're not even including Jalen Waddle, who probably would have been up there had he been healthy all year. And by the way, will give Alabama a heck of a boost if he's healthy for the national championship game. So that's another thing to factor. Kyle Trask, yeah, he had Kyle Pitts, but he didn't have anything similar to me to the kind of talent that Mac Jones got to work with. Trevor Lawrence clearly benefited from teams starting with Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl last year, just totally ganging up on Travis Etienne. So this is pretty fascinating to see how this shakes out. I mean, the Las Vegas odds say Devonta Smith, but I don't know that he's going to win. I mean, if Mac Jones or Trevor Lawrence won, I wouldn't be stunned. I think Smith will win, but it's a pretty cool year.
Now, I'm not asking you this question, Gene, because you're a Heisman voter and you do your homework and you're a 7-time sports writer of the year. You know all the answers. I'm going to give Darren a quick trivia question here. When's the last time a wide receiver won the Heisman Trophy?
Desmond?
Desmond, yeah.
Desmond Howard. I mean, and then I know before that, Tim Brown. I'm not sure who else before that. Johnny Rodgers. There haven't been many.
No, there has not been many. And the last time somebody other than a quarterback won this was Derrick Henry back in 2015. So it's been, I mean, this is a quarterback award now.
Yeah, and Jamie, to make it more than a trivial question there, I mean, I personally, I'll just say this. I didn't vote for Smith. I just think quarterback is so much more valuable to the team. And, I think he's a terrific talent. But just yesterday when the news broke that, Jalen Waddle might, be coming back and be available to Alabama for the national championship game, in several reports or, TV, radio, people saying, and was considered the biggest game-breaking player the Tide had before he got hurt. Well, that's interesting. I don't know. That doesn't take away from Smith. I love him. I think he's terrific. He's absolutely a baller. He's a mix of Steve Smith and Jerry Jeudy and all those other Alabama receivers. And I'm using Smith because he's kind of on the smaller side, not the classically real tall guy everybody wants these days. But like I said, I just think quarterback is obviously such a clearly important position to a football squad.
So that begs the question now. We're talking with Gene Sapakoff. Is it the most valuable or is it the best player in college football for the Heisman?
Yeah, it says it's the most outstanding. I definitely don't think it's the best as in the top NFL talent. That guy almost never wins. I mean, well, not almost never, but I don't know. We could go through the list here, but that's not necessarily a thing. I mean, we've got all kinds of cases of rather obscure Eric Crouch type guys that have won the Heisman Trophy. Jason White comes to mind, the Oklahoma quarterback. Some guys have never gotten any sort of NFL look.
That's who always comes to top of mind for me is Jason White. Every single time he is at the top of my mind when people think quarterback. If you win the Heisman, you're gonna just mosey right on to the NFL and have a great career. Well, that's not actually true at all. But what could be true with this class, you've got Mac Jones and you've got Trevor and you've got Kyle Trask, and then outside of that, and I guess rounding out the top 10, you've got Justin Fields in there, Zach Wilson, even Ian Book at 9. Those are all the quarterbacks that were in the top 10 for Heisman voting. When you look at this class of quarterbacks, what do you project for them, though, in the NFL? What type of class will this be once all of these guys are in the league? Because I think they're all going to the league in some way, shape, or fashion.
The easy answer would be to say average. I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence is the can't-miss Hall of Famer if he stays healthy. And that's not such an easy thing. If he goes on to play for a team that can't block for him and he just gets the heck beat out of him, like Jim Plunkett did early in his career, and many other quarterbacks have. David Carr, I thought, could have been a really good quarterback, but when he was with the Texans, he just got, just blasted every game, and it just kind of, I think, knocked a lot of the enthusiasm out of him after a while. But I think that Trask and Jones will be, starters, but not drafted necessarily that highly. And I think absolutely Justin Fields and Zach Wilson are going to be good NFL players.
I'm with you on that. Justin Fields, certainly, but I think people are forgetting about Zach Wilson. That kid, when he gets to the NFL, that's where it's going. And he fits that type of player. He fits that mold now.
Yeah, he does. And he got better and better. I just like everything about him. I almost think he could be one of these overrated, underrated guys by the time it gets to be the draft, where everybody's going to be on the bandwagon, and you almost have to pull back and say, okay, wait a minute, let's look at some stuff here. But you also get those guys out of sort of cold weather, group of five, and I realize BYU is an independent, but they really kind of project as a group of five type team. And you got to look at, the kinds of travel and the kinds of places they've had to play. And I think a lot of people, for instance, even though I think Josh Allen was picked at like 7 or something by the Bills, he was knocked because his touchdown to interception ratio just wasn't that good. And, I think some of it had to do with even weather and things like that, where he played at Wyoming. And then the other guy to look at too is this North Dakota State kid, Trey Lance.
That's the biggest question mark to me. We haven't seen enough of him this year, but I've seen much of Zach Wilson potentially even jumping fields and going Lawrence Wilson and then Justin Fields for the quarterbacks.
Yeah. I have to.
Yeah, that Fields Wilson thing will be interesting to see how that plays out, and it's going to be determined by, I think, what the Falcons think at number 3, and then if somebody wants to jump up and trade into the number 2 spot, which could be very possible because I think the Dolphins think they have the quarterback in Tua, and they need players. They already have 2 first-round picks. If they could parlay that move down and get some more picks, it could be really interesting to see who would want to jump in there because they love Zach Wilson or Justin Fields.
Gene Sapakoff, Post and Courier. We're going to get to Clemson here in just a moment and the national championship, but I would like you to educate all of us, if you don't mind, Gene, with the Heisman Trophy and the Heisman Trust and how this works. So, maybe start from the beginning of the year when you can, what voters kind of start doing what the timeline is as the year moves on, when the voting opens up, when it closes, and how does each state work? Like, from what I understand, I'm not exactly sure what your official role is, but you're in charge of the Heisman voters, right, in this state. So
yeah,
how does that work?
So there's state representatives for each state. The voting is roughly based like, just like general election about population of states. So, Texas has a lot more votes than North Dakota, but there's voters in every state, including, New Hampshire and Alaska probably have a few voters. Now, I know they have at least a few. So in South Carolina, there's like 21 voters. Most of them have been doing it quite a while, so they're aware of what they are looking for. And, from the beginning of the football season, occasionally somebody leaves a job in the middle of the season or late and there's a switch, but usually not. And you vote, for first, second, and third. And you vote after the conference championship games. And that's pretty much it. You can argue, and I agree, that there's too many Heisman voters. Like, for instance, in Major League Baseball awards, MVP and Cy Young, there's 2 voters per Major League city. And I really like that. You get this elite group of voters. What the Heisman originally and now likes is lots of publicity spread out all over the place. So I think that's why there's so many voters. And let's face it, like it or not, the Heisman Trophy is the coolest, most celebrated award in American sports. There's nothing else really close to it.
Talking with Gene Sapakoff, I know we've only got a couple minutes with you here. You have been on this Ohio State revenge train or discussion from the first time we started this show and had you on and discussed it You mentioned Ohio State losing to Clemson last year, the look in their face in the locker room, and it's been Ohio State coming from you. So now that we've seen this rematch and we've seen Ohio State dismantle Clemson, particularly up in the trenches, what's your takeaway of that game and then obviously the national championship?
I think Ohio State, we weren't sure what to make of them throughout this season because the slow start for the Big Ten season, and then they just never really had just a great game on both sides of the ball. Indiana, they gave up too much, on Ohio State just didn't look that good on defense. Northwestern really struggling on offense, and Fields in particular. So weren't sure what to make of it, but they sure got it together. That's the Ohio State team I think lots of people expected coming out of that Fiesta Bowl when I thought they would win the national championship this year. And people like Phil Steele and others picked them to win the national championship. So, I mean, it's not that surprising. It's just that it took a while to come together. I think it'll be a real good game in Miami. I think Alabama wins late and close.
We just had Brendan Gulick on from Buckeyes Now SI, and he said that since they lost to Clemson last year, 29-23, they have had that in their locker room, and they've looked at it every single day. What do you think is left in the tank after focusing on trying to get back to the Tigers and beating them the way they did? You've got Alabama. We all know that they know Alabama's coming, but it's different when you get out there on the field.
Yeah, and I thought about that the minute the time expired against Clemson, that can Ohio State, get this same kind of energy. I think if they had to play like the next week, that would have been tough, but I think Coach Day and the coaches and Justin Fields and the other really good team leaders on that team, Chris Olave, et cetera, will be good at saying, okay, that's Clemson, but we're not done yet, as teams keep repeating, and that'll be okay. But just position for position, I just think Alabama's better, and I think Alabama will benefit from seeing that Clemson film, and that it'll be eye-opening to them how good Ohio State really is.
Gene, Dabo Swinney for years has used different motivational tactics. He pulls them out of midair, and it seemed like last week the tide turned a little bit, no pun intended there, but it looked like Ryan Day had pulled Dabo Swinney's page right out of his own book.
Ryan Day coached, and let's just say too, because assistant coaches get underrated, Kevin Wilson, the offensive coordinator at Ohio State, boat raced Brent Venables, and those two guys coached together at Oklahoma. And don't you think that Kevin Wilson had to really think and stew on that game in the Fiesta Bowl for a long time? I mean, I've never seen a Brent Venables defense, and I'm talking about before Skalski went out and before guys started getting hurt. I mean, they were confused and struggling and got beat at every level, defensive line, linebacker, secondary, outguessed everything. So really impressive job. And yeah, Dabo, he made some strategical errors even before the game. The number 11 thing absolutely backfired and was silly. And yeah, within the game, they didn't have Tony Elliott, but that's not why they lost. I mean, they just got beat in absolutely every phase.
You think that Dabo really believed they were number 11, or he just intentionally did that?
I actually credit him for principle, the way he explained it. Look, if you didn't play 9 games, I'm not going to do this. But at some point, this goes back to when I started first covering like college football or a little afterwards. And Ken Hatfield, one time, the former Clemson coach, was saying, when you make another team mad, they're not going to be mad at you. They're not going to take it out on you, the quarterback or the coach or the top running back. They're going to take it out on the least common denominator on your team, the worst players. And they're going to pick on them all day and all game. And, Ohio State did a good job of really going after and exploiting matchups.
Yeah, like the offensive line that we've been talking about the entire season. I mean, as soon as you just referenced, they'll take it out on the weakest link. That's what I'm thinking, just how much they were just smashing them in the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what's interesting, Darren, is that Ohio State was the first team to come up with, let's stop Travis Etienne in the way that Bill Belichick said, let's stop Marshall Faulk and we'll slow down the Rams' greatest show on turf. So they stopped ETN, and they did last year. He had a terrible rushing game in the Fiesta Bowl. The thing is, Trevor Lawrence ran for a long touchdown, and ETN caught 2 touchdown passes. But almost every other team that played Clemson tried that blueprint this year. Hence, the Clemson yards per carry went down from 6.4 to 4.5 and forced the quarterbacks to make plays, which for the most part they did. But against a team with a really good secondary and pass rush like Ohio State, Trevor Lawrence just wasn't able to do consistently enough.
Final question, Gene, we'll let you run. We know what the offseason looks like for South Carolina. They're still trying to put together their coaching staff, and then they'll move forward. At Clemson, we spoke with Reggie Merriweather yesterday. He said that there are multiple coaches on this staff who will probably not be back, maybe pursuing other jobs. But he also went on to say he did not mean the top dogs like coordinators. He expected them to return, but there are guys who could be taking other positions. We did see today player development coach Chancey Stuckey, an off-field role. He's now on field with Baylor as their full-time wide receivers coach. What does the offseason look like for Clemson? Do you anticipate some coaching moves? We've seen a couple players in the transfer portal. We know Dabo Swinney doesn't like to sign transfers and junior college players. Do you think he bends on that? What do the next couple of months look like for the Tigers?
Well, it's going to be a weird offseason for them, unusual, but it's going to be for every team because of this glut that the free year of eligibility will have created. Yeah, they might lose a couple coaches. Not that big a deal. He's done a great job in the past of replacing, coaches and including coordinators. So I don't think that's a big deal. The big question mark to me is, will Clemson get into the transfer portal? And in particular, will they seek to get a top running back? They usually don't do that. They lose Travis Etienne. There is no one on that roster right now that looks like just a great player. If you're Clemson, you need a great player, a Wayne Gallman, Travis Etienne type guy there. And I think they should do it, especially having just watched what Oklahoma transfer Trey Sermon did to them in the Sugar Bowl.
Are you going to be at the national, or you won't be at the national championship game? You're not going there, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Well, we wish you were. But if you're not,
yeah, I wish I were.
We'll have you.
I love. I'm such a South Beach guy, you know.
Oh, I know.
I've always pegged you for that.
Yeah, me too.
yeah. You know, either South Beach or maybe the Everglades. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. There's South Beach $14 vodka waters.
Yeah,
down there that they serve. Yeah, they do give you a lemon slice though. Gene, thank you so much as always. Happy New Year. We look forward to recapping all of this with you next week.
Thanks a lot, guys.
There you go. Gene Sapakoff, 7-time Sports Writer of the Year with the Post and Courier. Follow along with Gene, with plenty to come here over the next few days on the Tigers side of things, the Gamecocks, and much, much more.
We discussed the transfer portal before Gene came on, before Brendan came on, kind of at the top of the show. Gene has been writing about this, about Clemson in his idea needing to dip into the transfer portal. I would expect to see it more. Like I said before, you're going to have to adapt. It doesn't matter that you're sitting here with your philosophy of, look, if you recruit to us, you're not going anywhere else, and you commit, and that's that.
That's not the way it is anymore.
Times change. Yeah. Times change. And if you're not at least exploring the possibility of the portal, if you're not in there looking around, then you're getting left behind by other teams who are. So it's a necessity right now, and every team should be utilizing it.
Yeah, I mean, every team's going to have a defection of sorts, and it's whether you believe you can fill those defections with what you've recruited. Remember, these transfers, they will count against your class, so you have to be careful. A lot of these teams, if they signed almost a full class, unless they have a bunch of transfers, they can't just go get a bunch of transfers.
You need the availability.
The numbers won't work. And that was one of the things that people over the last couple of weeks have not knocked Shane Beamer on, but for the numbers folks out there that just look at recruiting rankings and say, well, South Carolina only signed 10. What are we doing? We haven't signed anybody from the state of Florida. We haven't done this. We haven't done that. I don't know how many times he needs to say this, but that's by design. It's a new staff, and they know that they're going to be able to hit the transfer portal. And this year's just going to be a different year. They're not going to be signing 25 high school kids or 23 and a couple of JUCO kids. Like, the transfer portal will be in play. And I would venture a guess that Clemson will probably take one or two. I don't think they'll be in the market for a bunch of them, but I think they'll probably take one or two. If you've got a big name out there that's looking for a place to play, I mean, why not? Everyone else, you just mentioned it. Everyone else is doing it. You can't just not do it.
and you're still Clemson. You're still going to win the majority of your recruiting battles, whether you're recruiting a sophomore, junior, senior in high school, or whether you're recruiting a junior in college who can come into Clemson and run for 1,500 yards. You're still going to win those battles. So put your name in, like, be a part of those battles, and maybe steal yourself one.
I don't know how many battles Dan Mullen is in, but he might be in one with his own administration. We're going to talk about that on the other side of this break. Also, a column by Brandon Marcello out on Billy Napier and what his future may look like and what his past has looked like. And the spin zone is in full play in the Napier camp. We're going to tell you about that when we return here as it pertains to South Carolina itself. But first, our friends at Patriots Point present the national anthem daily at 1 o'clock, and we can't do what we do without them. Thank you so much to Chris and the team over at Patriots Point. If you have not been there in a while, you should go. patriotspoint.org for more information to be able to tour the Laffey, the Clamagore, the Vietnam War exhibit, and, of course, the USS Yorktown, patriotspoint.org. They are white glove certified, so if you want to take the family out there, you'll be safe. And believe it or not, they can keep you socially distanced on an aircraft carrier. It's possible. And everywhere else at the museum as well. patriotspoint.org for more information, and maybe pick up a cheesesteak on the way. I unfortunately, it's killing me. I for the next couple of weeks won't be allowed to have a cheesesteak. I'm really
allowed to have.
I'm not allowing myself. I'm really on this. Let me try to kind of cleanse I'm not like into the shakes and all that crap. I don't do all that. I don't even know. I see my wife does it. She makes these shakes,
protein type shakes,
right? And it looks like they're dropping magnolia leaves in there. I'm like, what is that? Oh, that's a whatever. I'm like, well, if I want to eat that, I go pick one off the tree. I don't want to eat that crap. So I'm not into that type of stuff, but I am trying to eat a little bit healthier, not drinking smaller portions, things like that over the next few weeks, just to feel better. The holidays really hammered me this year with all the family. So I won't have a cheesesteak, but I hope you'll have one for us. In a couple of weeks, I'll be back in there, probably gaining all my weight back. I'll probably double up every week when I go.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because you're going to be sitting next to me every day, and I'm not so much on that train.
DVs, yeah. Don't forget our friends, DV's Cheesesteaks, dvscheesesteaks.com, and don't forget the boardwalk fries, and they deliver as well. DV's is the best, tastiest cheesesteak in town. You voted them number one, by the way. dvscheesesteaks.com. All right, it is time for that timeout. When we return, Dan Mullen, Billy Napier, a little bit more on the Carolina coaching staff, and we got some hoops to get out as well. Plus, we'll dip into the Tiger Woods documentary one more time before we take off this afternoon. Right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, protected by McFadden Pest Control.
Is your old car really scary? Does it look dreadful or smell awful? Don't be frightened. There's never been a better time to trade in your spooky old car. Stokes Volkswagen just received a new shipment of the VW Atlas and VW Crossport. But here's what makes that even sweeter. Every new Atlas and Crossport is $3,000 off MSRP. Plus, every 2020 Volkswagen is available with 0% financing. That's right. You get both the huge discount and 0% financing. So if you want to play trick or treat at other dealerships, that's okay. Come see us at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or visit stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes Speed Up.
Plus tax tag includes $399.50 closing fee. Offer subject to lender approval. Expires month end.
Merry Christmas!
Keith Gunther here with McFadden Pest Control, wishing you all a happy holiday season. The only outdoors we want coming inside your home this time of year is the Christmas tree. McFadden Pest Control wants to make sure your family has a safe and enjoyable holiday season. And the best way we know how to do that is to make sure your homes are pest-free. We've been protecting the Low Country for over 40 years. Families trust us. We hope you will too. We're wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas from the entire McFadden Pest Control family. McFaddenPestControl.com.
Family Bingo Night is back. All 3 Dog and Duck locations. Every Monday from 6 to 8 is the perfect time to bring the kids, have dinner, and play bingo. They've upped the prizes with retail store gift cards, gas cards, in-house cash cards, and kid-friendly gift cards like Nintendo, pizza, App Store, and more. Thanks for supporting local businesses like the Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but guess what? I can always keep up with the news back in South Carolina because I've got the JB and Goldwater Show. Thank you, JB and Darren, for being live, loud, and online.
I've been from Tucson to Cocaine.
133. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. might be waiting on that tax payment to go get you a new car. StokesVW.com. They got some sweet rides out there. I don't, knock on wood, I don't wish I was in the market for a new car because it always kind of sucks to be in one because generally they're unexpected. But if I was, I would like the Tiguan, like
the Crossport.
The Crossport. Yeah. That's a sweet car. Man.
It is.
Because Volkswagens don't look like they used to look. Like I think about Volkswagens oftentimes like
the Beetle?
Like when I was growing up, like the high school girl had the Beetle or the mom had some old school Volkswagen that you were just like, cool, it's a Volkswagen.
There was a cabriolet, like
that.
Convertible thing. I remember my sister liked the car, went for a test drive. I mean, I vividly remember it. The pickup on that car was you can walk that fast.
Well, y'all have a Volkswagen.
Yeah, but not a like 1990 cabriolet.
No, that's what I'm talking about. Like it's a sweet ride. It's
Yes.
like it's just, I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, we're happy to have that was totally unscripted, by the way. That we're happy to have them as partners around here. That's not why we did that, but they're beautiful cars.
Yeah.
Beautiful cars. All right, real quick, did get a text earlier in the show and kind of referencing our buddies at Gamecock Central here as well, Chris Clark and Wes Mitchell. Just kind of want to reiterate that Derek Mason is not out of this just yet. At least that's the information they have. My text earlier said, hey, he's not eliminated or he hasn't turned them down or anything like that. Let's just hang tight for a few more days and see what happens here. I'm speculating on this a little bit, but Torian Gray, formerly at Florida, defensive backs coach. A lot of folks think he's going to land in Columbia. I still believe he will, based on the information and intel that I have received over again in the last couple of days. Could be a little bit of a holdup with those two. There have been reports that maybe Derek Mason was interested in bringing a coach with him. Not that this is any type of a struggle between Shane Beamer and Derek Mason or anything like that. Just kind of working out the kinks. Is this going to be the best fit or not? Those type of things. So we'll kind of wait and see, but it's still probably a couple more days maybe before this hire is officially made in Columbia at the defensive coordinator position. And probably when that hire is made, you'll hear a pretty quick announcement for the defensive backs coach.
Just like any other contract negotiation. I mean, if it's Derek Mason, if it's anybody else, their job is to be in charge of the defense.
Right.
So they need to make sure that they are given what they want in order to succeed at their job.
Right.
And if you're not able to come to an agreement there, then maybe that's not the best fit.
Yep.
It's not overly complicated.
Yeah. So we'll see kind of how it all unfolds. But I would encourage you there is some more information on this with Chris Clark at Gamecock Central. If you're a member to Gamecock Central, go check it out. We're not the people that just read other people's reports around here. That's not how this is going to work. They do have some additional information there and also on Will Muschamp. So I would encourage you to head to Gamecock Central to check out that information as well. But probably a couple more days on that. Now, Dan Mullen at Florida could be headed to Atlanta. Maybe. We'll see. The Falcons have some interest in interviewing Dan Mullen and potentially reeling him out of the SEC and out of Gainesville and into the NFL in charge of the Falcons organization. I just, again, this is another one of those situations. The Tennessee and the Florida situations, there has got to be more than what meets the surface and what meets the eye right now, Darren.
Yes.
These are some really interesting situations, and you just wonder how this could kind of wind back up this coaching, quote, carousel and how it could affect other jobs, how it could affect maybe some potential assistant coaches that are out there. I mean, let me ask you this question. If we got word today that Dan Mullen wasn't going to be at Florida anymore, would that open another door for Derek Mason? Not to go be the head coach at Florida, but maybe he could go to Gainesville as the defensive coordinator. So I can understand, like, as it pertains to South Carolina, as it pertains to the Gamecocks specifically in this conversation, I hope people will understand that in the coaching industry, there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and these guys all know each other, and their agents talk and their friends talk and things like that. And so if they're kind of holding off on something, or if there's not an announcement that's been made or a hire that's been made, and you really want this guy and what's going on with him, there might be something else churning around. And there could be in Knoxville and in Gainesville right now with two entirely different situations. The Mullen situation, based on Matt Hayes' report with Saturday Down South yesterday, looks like it's been brewing for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as the season went on, you and I touched on some of this here and there, just seemed awkward. Like, he just said some really strange things, and just there was just some stuff that just seemed kind of off down there, but never really dug too much into it. Florida was having a really good year. They were a playoff contender. And then, you know, you get to the bowl game, they're blown out, and then his comments afterwards were really strange, and they had all of those opt-outs. And the strange comment I'm referencing, if people missed it, you touched on it yesterday, was where he said, well, our season ended 11 days ago in the SEC championship game. You know, it was great to get to walk on some experience. Oh, that's interesting, because that's not really what the fans and the administration thought. They thought, you know, you might want to go try to beat Oklahoma here in the Cotton Bowl, and they didn't do it. So, and they didn't even come close to doing it. So it just seemed like there was this, well, you know, we'll get them next year, and you know, yeah, I might not be here anyway, so who really cares what happens? It's off. It's off. Something's off.
Yes, and it has felt that way, because as good as the year has been, there have also been their little valleys with their peaks, and the valleys with the defense, and maybe we are getting this defense fixed right now, and then now that's not so much the case. And so because of that, because it feels off, right? It's not virtually, it's impossible from where we sit to put a finger on what's off and what isn't comfortable right now in Gainesville, but something is off, and that's apparent, and you can tell that from the outside looking in. So maybe this is Dan Mullen kind of threatening Florida to say, you know, I could jump to the NFL. I don't think Florida, it doesn't sound like, is so threatened. I mean, it sounds like if he jumps, they're saying, okay, we'll go find someone else.
Yeah.
So it could be a ploy from Mullen. Until this came out, I never once thought of Mullen as an NFL guy. Maybe that's just me. I mean, I had never thought about it at all, but it surprised me that this was coming out. So it could be he's threatening a little. It could be that he's trying to get out before they get him. But it is strange. And with Tennessee, yeah, that you can tell what's happening right there. There are lawyers involved. They're clearly digging for something over there.
Doesn't make any sense.
No, but yes, that does impact all of these coaching decisions, because the guys in the coaching world talk. They're all talking. They know far before we know what may come down the road.
Right.
So it's understandable to be in a holding pattern here. So I want the Gamecocks job, but if Florida comes calling, that might be a better fit for me.
Absolutely. Or even Tennessee. I mean, you know, Derek Mason's in Nashville. Knoxville's only 2 hours away. I mean, and you just mentioned the Tennessee situation a moment ago. For those who are maybe just tuning in, Tennessee, of course, has been internally investigating their football program for some NCAA infractions over the last few weeks. Well, now there's a couple of lawyers involved. One of them worked on the NCAA Internal Affairs or whatever it is committee for 7 years. I probably have that term wrong. But he also was involved 10 years ago in getting rid of Bruce Pearl in Knoxville. Well, generally, when you are investigating yourself, you have a compliance team. Everybody has a compliance office, and your compliance team investigates internally. And if they find something that they feel like is wrong, they will present that evidence to the NCAA, and oftentimes they will even penalize themselves, essentially, is what LSU did.
Yeah, you see it all the time. You just self-imposed penalties. That's right. And then hope the NCAA is a little bit more lenient.
They'll have to accept that, or they'll come back and say, no, this is what we're going to do. Right. Yep. Or they'll accept that and add on to it. You just don't really ever know. But it is rare when things like this happen to be internally investigating yourself, to go hire two high-profile attorneys. Like, what are you hiring them for? Or, I mean, why would you hire let me ask you this question. Why would you hire an attorney in an investigation? Forget that it's an internal. You hire an attorney to defend yourself, right? Right?
Yes.
If you feel like you've done something wrong, you need to or if somebody's accusing you of doing something wrong, you hire an attorney to defend yourself or to mitigate or whatever it may be, right?
Yes, or you hire an attorney to build a case against somebody else.
That's what I'm talking. That's what I'm going to here. They hired an attorney against themselves. Like, this is all within Tennessee. So from the outside looking in, it's like, you hired an attorney to defend yourself against yourself. Oh, wait, what'd you just say? Maybe not. Maybe they hired an attorney to say, well, what do we do here to get rid of him and not have to pay him $13 million to do so?
And it's easy to do both at the same time if you're those. Or
right.
Let me rephrase that. If you're Tennessee, it's easy to put a blanket over the attorneys and say, well, we need to know everything that went on so that when the NCAA comes back, we can present all of our findings with the help of attorneys, and we're fully prepared to defend ourselves with all of the information. Okay, clearly. You can also, while that's happening, have these guys looking at some other things and casually say, you know what? As we were preparing to defend ourselves, guess what popped up? Guess what we found? And now here's how we're going to react to that.
Right. Well, and but here's the kicker with all of this, though, Darren. They're conducting an internal investigation in Knoxville for alleged recruiting violations and alleged impermissible benefits to athletes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Recruiting violations? You need an attorney for these teeny tiny little recruiting violations? No, you don't. You don't need attorneys for any of that crap. So anybody remember the Josh Belk story? The guy who left Clemson, came to Carolina, left Carolina. He's now a truck driver, big-time 5-star defensive tackle from the state. He hired an attorney. I'm not going to get into this whole story, but if you actually have dug up a little bit on this, you'll know why he hired an attorney to get out of Clemson. A little bit more to that backstory than what was ever actually proven in public. But he hired an attorney for a reason. Tennessee is hiring an attorney based on recruiting infractions. There is more going on. Does that mean that the infractions are worse? I don't actually believe that. I think what that means is they're trying to find a way out of Jeremy Pruitt. I think that's what it means. I don't think that he's in the clear. I don't care that they gave him a contract earlier in the year or a contract extension.
Nope.
I don't think that matters. I think they're trying to find another way to get out of this deal and move in a different direction. I mean, they sucked this year. So, I mean, so did South Carolina, but they're the only team in the SEC that like truly sucked that didn't make a coaching change.
Right. Or hadn't just made a coaching change. Right. So I agree. I think that's what they're doing.
I mean, they showed no improvement.
It looks from the outside in that is what they're trying to do. And of course, I wouldn't sit here and say, oh yeah, Pruitt's fine. Just like Tom Herman, when he got that nice little vote of confidence, he's our guy at Texas.
None of that means anything.
It doesn't mean a thing.
No.
It means the same when coaches are like, I am happy here.
Right.
I love where I'm at. So take my name out of consideration for that job. And then 3 days later, it's like the same guy being mentioned for another job.
Yeah.
It's words mean nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
And even these contracts can be broken. So it's anything on the surface is just to keep things calm for now. And then we'll deal with the next thing that comes when the next thing comes. It would not surprise me in the least if Tennessee opens up at some point.
Or Florida. 843-321-8893 is our phone number, and it's also our text line if you'd like to be a part of the conversation. We just saw this happen at Texas. Tom Herman, you're fine. Tom Herman, you're fired. Steve Sarkisian, you're hired. Could this happen in one of these places, and could that be Billy Napier? Brandon Marcello with 247sports.com wrote an article that came out 4 hours ago, and it's titled Why Billy Napier Keeps Passing Up Power 5 Jobs. Now, in this column, or in this article, I would say, it says that he has turned down feelers from a blue blood football program like Auburn and another with a rabid and hungry fan base in the SEC East, and whom Brandon Marcello, who, by the way, is an excellent reporter, is referencing here is South Carolina. Now, these are not in his words. This is what he is reporting based on those he has spoken with close to Billy Napier. The spin zone is quite strong, apparently, down in Lafayette, Louisiana. He did not turn down the South Carolina job. He was never offered the South Carolina job. Period. The end. There's no more to that story. Ray Tanner didn't offer him the job. He didn't turn it down. He didn't walk away from it. Shane Beamer was the guy.
Yep.
That's it. Period. He might have issued a statement, well, I'm staying at Louisiana. No crap, because you weren't offered the job at South Carolina, and you're not going there.
Right.
All right. I can't speak to exactly what happened at Auburn, but I don't think they offered him the job either. Okay? I'm staying at Louisiana, but you weren't offered the job at Auburn. He wasn't offered either one of those jobs. Now, it doesn't mean that he might not have been, but he wasn't. And could he be at Tennessee or at Florida? Is this something where, again, we don't ever know the back channels of these conversations, but is this another Steve Sarkisian-like move maybe in the works at Florida or at Tennessee? Hey, Billy, his agent is Jimmy Sexton. Hey, Billy, hang tight. I got a feeling that what's going to happen in Knoxville or what's going to happen in the Swamp is going to be a little bit more beneficial to us, and you're going to be able to move right on in. Better talent, better situation. You're not going to have to play Alabama every year. You're not going to have to rebuild at South Carolina. Whatever it is, whatever the I don't know what the pitch is, but I'm just throwing out crap here. Could that be in play?
Two thoughts. One, of course it can be in play. Secondly, be careful. That's a dangerous game to play, more so in coaching than any other profession. Because more so in coaching than any other profession, it's you strike when things are hot. Right now, Billy Napier's hot. He was hot last year when he turned down a couple of jobs, and this year said, because I couldn't get more excited than being here with these guys at Louisiana.
Which is a lie.
Oh, yes. So, okay, fine. So you go back. You have a great start to the year, knocking off Iowa State. Here you are again. You're the hot name. You played well throughout the year. I wouldn't say, you remained like the hottest name out there, but you kept your name around the top. So if you're playing this game of, I'm just going to keep waiting for that perfect job, and then next year, Louisiana takes a couple injuries. They go 5-5. Billy Napier's luster is gone. Is he even a candidate for a Florida job? If Florida doesn't open this year and it opens next year. If Tennessee doesn't open this year and it opens next year. Be careful. It's a dangerous game to play.
One of the quotes in this column is this: he doesn't want to take a job that already has immediate disadvantages built in before you play a game, end quote. A person close to Napier told 24/7 Sports. As it pertains to South Carolina, whatever. I mean, they could be referencing a bunch of things there. Look, they went 2-8 this year. They need more talent. They have to play Clemson every year. They could be referencing a bunch of things. As it pertains to Auburn, they could be referencing, look, you're going to be compared to Nick Saban in Alabama every year. You better be prepared for that. You're going to get hired to get fired here, because that's what happens at Auburn. You're around for a while and then you're not.
Yeah.
Even if you win a national championship or you play for one, then they'll move on. But you're right about that. What I could continuously come back to be a little bit more of an optimist on the side of Billy Napier here is there more at play behind the scenes, as I mentioned, in Knoxville or in Gainesville. What I think if you're a Carolina fan, if you've read this column or if this is the first time you're hearing about it, you should take great pride in the fact that he's not your coach. Honestly, you should take great pride in the fact that he's not your coach and Shane Beamer is. I mean, clearly this guy, I don't know how much of what he's putting out is truly truth or if it's just hyperbole or whatever it is. But obviously this guy is being very picky about where he goes next, and that's fine. I'm good with that. Being picky is fine. You're right. You got to know when to strike when the iron's hot. There's no question. Both of those can be true in the same sentence. And they should be true in the same sentence. Don't just take another job to take one or because it's, quote, just the next step. Shane Beamer didn't do that. He waited on the job for him, and he got it. But you should be happy that it's not Billy Napier, because obviously if that quote is there, he doesn't want to take a job that already has immediate disadvantages built in before you play a game. Well, then clearly he was looking at South Carolina thinking, I already have disadvantages. Shane Beamer looks at everything in Columbia and says, I have great advantages here to win. Those are two totally different mentalities if that quote is true. So if you're Auburn, if you're South Carolina, you might have dodged a bullet in Billy Napier.
Dude, it's the glass is half full, half empty type thing, because you can look at any job and say, what are my disadvantages here? There are, of course, there are pros and cons to every decision that you're going to make. Or you can look at it and say, look, I understand that there are inherent disadvantages, but here's the pool of what I can build on to make those disadvantages smaller and to make my advantages greater. So if you're looking at it from a negative standpoint, then it's going to be tough to overcome that really anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, you can name any school in the country. If there's a coaching opening, one of two things happen. Either A, the guy was successful and took another job and left, or B, he wasn't successful, so he got fired. So right there, you got two disadvantages right off the top. Number one, I'm following this guy who just had a ton of success, and man, that's going to be really hard to do. Or, look, man, they haven't been successful in a while. Why haven't they been successful? Because they got their rival right here. Their recruiting suffered here. It's just a matter of how you look at things. But if that's how the prism you're looking through, then that's not a guy I want leading my program. I want a guy who wants to be there, who wants to say, look, put my disadvantages over here. I'll deal with them. But let's work on the positives.
Right. And there's a few other things, and we'll move on from this, but there's a couple of other things referenced in here as well that, he states that, he's waiting on the school that's going to basically provide all the resources he needs. I'm summarizing here with air quotes, but one direct quote from this column: South Carolina didn't have all of the pieces or the environment for that type of growth. And what he's talking about is wanting to be able to a program to be able to provide the infrastructure that he requires to run his type of program. Ray Tanner made no bones about it. Whatever you need, we'll give it to you here to make this happen. Auburn, you're going to sit here and tell me they don't have all the pieces or the environment to create and build whatever type of infrastructure it takes? Has anybody ever actually looked at Auburn and the people that are involved down there? They'll do whatever it takes, period. The end. Hello, Cam Newton, Mr. Laptop. All right. They'll do whatever it takes. And Carolina has committed, and I'm not talking about from a cheating standpoint, I'm saying from a resources standpoint, they have totally committed that. Ray Tanner's been incredibly open about that. And the people that have been sourced with Coach Tanner and discussing this have literally word for word regurgitated what he has said. Like, if you're the right guy and this is what you need, we're going to give it to you here at South Carolina. So this spin from the Billy Napier camp, in my mind, is pretty bizarre. And I think it's a little ridiculous. Maybe he ends up in Florida. Maybe he ends up in Tennessee. I don't know where he ends up, but I think Carolina and Auburn certainly dodged a bullet of saying stuff like that's just not true. Like, none of that's just a lie is what it is.
And how high maintenance are you? I mean,
what are you going to do that's so different from the rest of the football universe? Because if you're really that guy, if you're that guy, we got the second coming of Saban, folks. Everybody should be kicking down the doors and firing their coaches to get it.
Right. How great are you, and how annoying are you going to be to work with? Because if that's the attitude that you're willingly putting out there, then to me that says if things aren't going well, it's not my fault. It's your fault. Oh, and then something else isn't going well, your fault. Yeah. Your fault. Your fault. There's no accountability there at all. If you're sitting there from the get-go saying everything's got to be perfect here around me, because you're just waiting for that next excuse of what isn't perfect and what needs to be fixed, when maybe you should be looking back at yourself.
We'll see what his future looks like. Dabo Swinney might have fired him for a reason. Maybe we're starting to figure that out. If you missed the news, the entire NCAA Hoops tournament is in Indianapolis. Frank Martin's a big fan. He spoke on that today, said he was very excited and thought that they'll do a great job. That's going to be neat. That'll be interesting. Certainly, they'll play at Hinkle as well. That's going to be pretty cool. Darren, we'll see how this all works out. It probably wouldn't all be in Indianapolis if Mike Krzyzewski got his way with having 6,000 teams in the tournament. But they won't. They'll have 68, and they'll all be in Indy somehow, and they'll all find a way to play it. But it'll be the most unique tournament we've ever seen. I know this. They have no interest in canceling another tournament this year. So they're going to figure it out.
That's exactly – they can't. They cannot afford to do that.
Lose another $1 billion.
The interesting thing, it first came out, every game's going to be in Indianapolis. Then it was edited slightly. Every game will be in Indiana. So it'll be around the Indianapolis area. But, I mean, who knows about the fans and whatnot? Because the last thing you want is a team traveling and contracting COVID, and then we got to push this game back or cancel that game. You can't do that with the NCAA tournament. So bubble it up as much as you can.
Are they going to condense the schedule, or are they going to still play it a week out?
No idea. I don't think they've announced that.
That will be fascinating to see.
They can't really condense it too much.
They could probably not shave a day or two if they needed to, but they like it on the weekends, so
right,
for the ratings.
Yeah, it would be
Thursday, Friday.
Right, it would be tough. You got the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It would be tough to really trim down the days between, I think.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Could be some long time spent in Indianapolis or the state of Indiana if you're making a run at it. Real quick, what day is today on the Handy Dandy National Days calendar? It is January the 5th. It is National Screenwriters Day.
All right.
To all the good ones, we salute you.
The Screenwriters Guild.
It's also National Keto Day, the Keto Diet.
No.
No thanks.
No. Kale is the worst invention ever. True. And everyone who thinks that every Caesar salad should now be kale should go away.
Celebrate the keto diet with whipped cream. It is National Whipped Cream Day.
It still won't make kale better, but have some whipped cream.
And that's it on the national days.
All right.
Thanks to Brendan Gulick, Gene Sapakoff for joining us today on the JB and Goldwater Show. Thanks to our friends at McFadden Pest Control who protect us around here every day. McFaddenPestControl.com. Get rid of them. It's a new year. Might be new bugs. We don't want the bugs. Get rid of the bugs. Tomorrow, an hour with J.C. Sherbert. Deep dive into the Carolina football program. Who wins the Heisman tonight? My pick's Devontae Smith. Yours?
My pick is Smith wins it. I wouldn't go that way. I'd say it's Jones.
I think Devontae Smith is the winner as well. For Darren, I'm Jamie. Thanks for watching and listening to our program here. Have a terrific Tuesday afternoon. And we're back tomorrow at noon on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.